Hello, it's nice to meet you again. More than 50% of the world's population lives in the circle you are seeing, and do you think it is a coincidence? Let's zoom out to analyze. India and China alone together contribute to more than 2.8 billion people, equivalent to 35% of the world's population, but many other neighboring countries are in this circle, also has an equally large population. Indonesia has 277 million, Pakistan has 250 million, Bangladesh has 173 million and Japan 123 million, Philippines and 117 million, Vietnam 104 million, and those are just countries with over 100 million people, and all the countries in the circle you are seeing together account for more than 50% of the world's population. The question is why? Why is more than half of the population concentrated in a small area that includes East Asia, South Asia and Southeast Asia? With a total area of less than 15% of the world's land area, is there some coincidence related to this land? Let's delve into the most populous countries. First we have India. Why is India the most populous in the world? India is where the Australian plate touches the Eurasian plate. The collision caused the ground to rise, creating the world's largest mountain range, formed by the Himalayas, Tibetan Plateau, Hindu Kush Range, Hungawanshan Range. The weight is so heavy that when these mountains sink they drag the surrounding land down with them, creating vast valleys and plains around which land carries moisture from the Indian Ocean. Blocked by the Himalayas, the altitude becomes colder, causing water to stop condensing and rain to fall. Some rainwater falls directly on India, making much of the country fertile, while most of the remaining water falls on the Himalayas and flows down. All of this water concentrated in the Ganges Valley region, causing this place has high humidity, good for growing crops. The Ganges River carries sediment that fertilizes the soil of any area through which it flows. Rain, fertilizer, a large river for irrigation, and temperature are all perfect conditions for agriculture, making India one of the world's largest food producers, and food is synonymous with population. The problem is that if you look to the left of India you will find many of the world's great deserts, which are the Sahara, the Arabian Desert and the Sonoran Desert. So why is India so fertile while other lands at the same latitude are dry, sandy deserts?
In fact, the subtropical latitudes ranging from latitude 25 to latitude 35 in both hemispheres are called horse latitudes. We represent horse latitudes with two red bands like you see at high latitudes. The temperature is below a high pressure range where dry air settles, creating an arid climate with very little rain, resulting in large deserts. We know that the equator is the hottest place in the world, because the sun shines directly on it. It evaporates water and heats the air. Hot air is lighter, so it rises high and touches the colder air of the upper layers of the atmosphere, causing water to stop condensing and form rain. The equator nourishes tropical forests. The remaining cold, dry air continues to rise, and away from the equator it descends over the Sahara and other lands in the latitudes, without carrying any water, but this does not happen in India. Degree where most of the territory lies in latitude. The real reason is not too difficult to understand. The Eurasian continent is the only part of the world that has a large ocean in the south and a giant continent in the north. During the Indian Ocean summer and the Eurasian continent heats up. This heat source causes water in the Indian Ocean to evaporate, adding moisture to the air. The problem is that the land heats up faster than the ocean, so in the summer the Eurasian continent is hotter than the Indian Ocean. A lot of air evaporates above the Eurasian continent, forming a low-pressure area similar to a vacuum region that sucks in hot, humid air from the Indian Ocean and rains down on the Himalayas. So India is very populous because the country is very fertile, and it is fertile because of the temperature and humidity. The temperature comes from its subtropical location, while the humidity comes from the monsoon that blows from the Indian Ocean, and the monsoon comes from the fact that the Eurasian continent is so large and the Indian Ocean is right below it. The monsoon winds are blocked by the Himalayas, and the water flows down to form rivers that carry water for irrigation and sediment for fertilizer. Fertilization and alluvial soil assay is concentrated in the valleys where the weight of the Himalayas pulls the land lower than the far south, all of which is created by the Australian and Indian plates. Into the Eurasian plate that causes the monsoons makes India so fertile. We have explained how a random geological event could create a country with more than 1.4 billion, so what about the rest? When you look at Pakistan, Bangladesh and Nepal, the story is almost the same. Pakistan is almost entirely located in the Indus Valley, similar to India. Pakistan's population was born from the collision of the Indo-Australian plate with the Eurasian plate, creating the ranges. Himalaya and Hindu Kush along with monsoon. The story of Bangladesh is the same. Inside this country, the Brahmaputra River joins the Ganges before it flows into the Gulf of Bengal of the Indian Ocean. The entire population of Nepal is more than 30 million people, also concentrated in the Ganges Valley, and almost no one lives in the Himalayas. Thus, the number of more than 1.8 billion people living on the Indian subcontinent may have originated from the impact over millions of years between the Eurasian and Indo-Australian tectonic plates. So what about China like India? Geography also determines China's history. You are seeing a population density map of China, in which the red and dark red areas represent areas with a high concentration of eastern population, whereas the blue areas represent low population, sparsely populated. It is not surprising that China's population is concentrated in the most fertile plains, and the cause of that fertility comes from the Yellow River, the Yangtze River to a lesser extent, the Pearl River and the Yangtze River, smaller rivers. Obviously these rivers do not come from the Tibetan Plateau and other mountain ranges in the second region, again from the collision event between the Australian Insular Plate and the Eurasian China Plate is part of the Eurasian continent, so when the succulent monsoon winds blow in from the Indian Ocean, it drenches this land and creates rich plains. Speaking of plains, have you ever wondered why? Why do the Himalayas and other giant mountain ranges stop in a line almost parallel to the coast? Why do the mountains not go all the way to the coast? We are not sure of the exact mechanism that causes this. But it appears that the Pacific Plate sank beneath the Eurasian Plate over millions of years, destroying the rocks above it and flattening the land, creating such vast plains in East Asia that in addition to the plate, Australia collides with the Eurasian Plate. The reason why China is fertile and populous also comes from the fact that the Pacific Plate has receded below the Eurasian Plate. This is also beneficial for both South Korea and North Korea. The Korean peninsula is as crowded as it is today thanks to the monsoon and the silt of the rivers that bring fertility to the flat valleys. At this point, you probably already recognize the pattern. Yes, the same is true of the rest of Southeast Asia. All the major rivers of the Indochina Peninsula, including the Irrawaddy River, the Salween-Mekong River, and the Red River, all originate in the Tibetan Himalayas or other mountainous regions, were created by the collision between the two Eurasian plates and the Indian Plate. Australia can see that every major country in the circle of more than 4 billion people is built around large rivers created by the Himalayas, which is the country Pakistan around the Indus Valley in northern India, mainly around the Ganges River, Bangladesh around the Ganges and Brahmaputra rivers, Myanmar around the Irrawaddy River, Thailand around the Krai River, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, and Vietnam around the Mekong River, northern Vietnam around the Red River, and China around the Yellow River, Yangtze and Pearl River. And it is not a coincidence that these rivers pass through these countries. In fact, they created these countries' rivers that transformed these countries' valleys into fertile lands, allowing civilizations to emerge. In short, the population of mainland Southeast Asia can be grouped into the same root cause. The collision of the Eurasian and Indo-Australian plates created large rivers in the region. Conversely, the rivers took care of the valleys. fertilize and water them. These lands are also warm because of their latitude. These lands are also warm because of their latitude and wet because of the same monsoon that brings rain to India and China. These conditions created the fertility necessary for civilizations to emerge along the great rivers of Southeast Asia, such as the gigantic size of the Eurasian continent and its collision with the Indian plates. Australia and the Pacific Ocean explain the entire population of the southern and eastern countries of Southeast Asia. But what about the island nations? Indonesia, Japan, and the Philippines don't get a drop of water from the rivers. Originating from Tibet, how the hell can they give birth to more than 500 million people? However, the cost still comes from the activity of those familiar tectonic plates. 55% of Indonesia's population comes from the island of Java, and the reason why this island is so fertile is because it has so many volcanoes. Not only true for Java, but true for most of Indonesia. Usually the most fertile areas are the areas with the most active volcanoes. Volcanic soil is very fertile because there are many minerals brought by lava, and you guess what causes the volcano? Yes, it's because our beloved Eurasian plate collides with the Australian plate. In other words, a large part of Indonesia's population was also born from the collision of the Australian and Eurasian plates. Looking up to the northeast of Indonesia, we will see the Philippines. And do you know what is in the Philippines? Yes, lots of volcanoes. The Philippines is located on the boundary where the Philippine Sea sinks under the Eurasian plate and the subduction life, where one tectonic plate falls, sinks below another tectonic plate, is a volcanic paradise, and you try to look at the north of what is the Philippines along the tectonic plate boundary. Yes, Japan. Thus the overcrowding of Indonesia, the Philippines, Taiwan and Japan has the same formula. The islands were formed by the collision between the Eurasian plate and other plates, including the Australasian plate, the Philippine Sea plate, and the Pacific plate, with many volcanoes making them extremely fertile. In short, the reason why there are so many people living in the circle you are seeing is because a giant continental plate, the Eurasian plate, is colliding strongly with other tectonic plates. From the collision with the continental crust of the Eurasian plate, a massive mountain range was created, blocking the wind, collecting water, and distributing it into many different rivers, each of which gave birth to a civilization. Where the Eurasian plate collides with the oceanic crust, the oceanic plate will slide down below, creating volcanic arcs with fertile land to create many civilizations in the middle of the ocean. When the Eurasian plate collides with the Australian plate at the location of Indonesia, it creates Indonesia. When it collides with the Philippine Sea plate, it creates the Philippines. And when it collides with the Pacific plate, it creates Japan. And because all these collisions happen near the equator, near the ocean, all these countries are hot and humid, and because the Eurasian plate is so large, it creates monsoons that attract more humidity, moisture to land. At this point, the only question left is why the Eurasian plate collides so violently with the other three plates. Is it the continental plate where 50% of the population lives that likes to cause trouble? It turns out that while the Eurasian plate is rotating clockwise and going southeast, the Australian plate is moving north, while the Pacific plate along with the Philippine Sea plate is moving west. It was like three trains colliding. The difference is that this accident not only did not take anyone's life, but it also gave birth to more than half of humanity. And so Infinity News has helped you answer the question of why more than half of the world's population lives inside this circle. If you still have anything to answer, please comment below as always. Remember to like if you find this video interesting, subscribe to the channel and ring the bell so you don't miss the latest content from us. For now, goodbye and see you again.